Yeah, it wasn't my publisher, it was me. I actually wrote that subtitle. And it's a question, there's a question mark at the end of that because uh, while I was researching the concept of the book, which is how many people can fit on this planet without tipping it over, I began to realize that this is the granddaddy of all issues. Every other environmental problem that we have, in fact, most of our social problems, has to do with so many people on the world making so many demands upon it and upon each other and needing to eat and all of those things. And at a certain point, the math just doesn't work anymore. Things start to collapse if they can't keep up. And the question that I pose in this book is, in order to bring everything else under control and to bring some balance and harmony and to not just the present, but to our future, do we have to contend with this issue of maybe we're too many, and is there a way that we can comfortably deal with it? Because if we don't, we may be in big problem. And I'm a journalist. I put the question mark out there because that was my question. I want the readers to decide if this is in fact the thing that we have to do. You remember the famous hockey stick graph about how carbon dioxide went suddenly up like this over the last 150 years? The population graph looks like this. And that's not a coincidence. We simply have more people on the planet, and we're all addicted to two things on this earth. We're addicted to food, and we are addicted to energy. The first one, we've always needed energy. It's been kind of an acquired taste since the Industrial Revolution, shall we say. But everybody on earth wants it. They need fuel, even if they're burning dung. And after a while, the amount of carbon dioxide just starts to mount, and that's exactly what we're doing. So as far as I can tell right now, given that our renewable technologies aren't mature enough to run the entire planet, this is probably the most significant and most efficient and fastest way that I know of, that we can start minimizing the amount of carbon that we put in the atmosphere, and that's by minimizing the number of people who are demanding that energy. Because everywhere I went, and I went to 21 countries for this book, rich country, poor country, it turned out that the best contraceptive is educating females. Because a girl almost invariably postpones her pregnancies while she's studying. So we're not talking about child brides pumping out kids when they're in their teens. And then once she's done, she's got something interesting and useful to do with her life. She can help her family economically. She probably wants to have kids, but you can't do all those things with your education if you got 7 kids clinging to you. So on the average, all over this planet, you get a girl through secondary school, and on the average, she's going to have 2 children or fewer. Now, with 2 children, that takes 2 people to make a baby, so population doesn't grow. 2 people replace themselves. Anything fewer, population starts to come down. And frankly, if we just educated women all over and made sure that they had access to contraception, we wouldn't have a population problem. Half the countries in the world now are at, below, or nearing replacement rate. And parts of some of the countries that aren't, like India, most of the states in India are actually getting below replacement rate, which is important because India is about to surpass China as the most populous nation in the coming decade. Unfortunately, the 10 states that aren't there are way, way above. But there are great examples right in India for how these things can improve. I saw this thing turn around on a dime in some countries. I mean, I have a whole chapter devoted to Iran, which at one point had the highest birth rate probably in the history of humanity, because they were trying to build a 20 million man army to defend themselves against the attacking Iraqis. And they wanted every fertile woman to get pregnant, do her patriotic duty. And then when they realized that the population had grown out of control, they couldn't possibly employ all these kids when they all grew up, they had to do something drastically, They implemented the most intelligent voluntary family planning program anywhere on Earth. It involved, free contraception. The only thing that was obligatory was premarital classes, which is not a bad idea for anybody. And in it, people learned how much it cost to raise, feed, clothe, educate a kid. And they encouraged women to stay in school. And there was also a religious fatwa saying there's nothing in the Quran against any kind of birth control, up until and including surgery, if wisdom dictates you got the number of children that you want. They came down to replacement rate a year faster than China's one-child policy did. So we can really accomplish a lot very quickly. Well, we're going to get it, or it's going to get right, because in the history of biology, nature will always knock back any species that exceeds its resource base. And if they've really eaten everything completely and destroyed their resource base, sometimes this leads to an extinction. Every species eventually goes extinct, just like everybody dies, but I'm not ready for mine to do that. But I think we're going to get knocked back severely, or we could manage it simply in our best interests by having fewer children, the numbers that we can manage and raise. We would have to dedicate less food to just ourselves. We would have to dedicate less space to just ourselves. There'd be room for some of our other companions. And that's not only an ethical position that other species are nice, but frankly, we need them. Countdown, I spent a lot of time with ecologists in many different countries, and other species are indispensable to our own survival. We've already pushed too many off the edge of this planet. We don't want to find out too late that we should have kept that last one.